Hi there, and it is Disaster Responder Assets Network again with Behind the Mask. It's Monday evening and afternoon, and tonight we have a very special guest with us. His name is Chris Harder, and Chris Harder is an active NorCal fire captain who had the opportunity to deploy as a peer support specialist to New York during the COVID response. Chris, hi, how are you?
Hello, very good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being here with us. So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a fire captain here in Northern California. My career started back as a volunteer back in '91. So I've been in it for 30 years now. Now that I think about it, it's a long time. I've been with a couple different departments until I finally landed the job where I'm at now. And we are a transporting agency. I'm also a paramedic. So I've been doing paramedic for probably 22 years as well. So been doing this for quite some time. More recently, in the last 6 to 8 years, I've got involved with our peer support program at work, and then also with some other organizations that provide peer support, as well as we have a county critical and stress management team and peer support program that I am part of right now.
Thank you again for everything that you do. You've done tremendous amount of peer support. I know just locally here, how many times you were able to support different agencies, not just the ones that you work with, but other agencies as well, including hospitals with peer support. So thank you so very much for your dedication to really supporting the first responders, frontline responders, disaster relief responders, and everybody who's really involved with the response to critical events, essentially.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for doing what you do.
You're welcome.
Tell me about your New York experience. I'm really interested in hearing, how was it to go out there, spend a month in New York, and being able to really be there firsthand assisting with peer support?
Yeah. Gosh, I remember when I got the call from the organization that I was with, or actually before I got the call, I had heard of a group that was already heading out there, and it was an immediate need. This was following the initial response of the nurses that went out there. There was a staffing agency that hired on, at one point in time, had 5,000 nurses out there. This agency found very quickly that within the first week or so, some of the things that the nurses were seeing were so detrimental to the nurses that actually quite a few of them left and actually went home and weren't able to continue their assignment there. It was that point in time that the agency realized that we need to help our members, because if people keep going home like this, they're not going to be able to support the needs out in New York. So that's when they contracted through the peer support program organization that I was a part of. And so they initially sent a wave of, I believe, 5 people out there initially. And I remember seeing that text, and I was really wanting to be a part of that. I knew that there was a huge need, and I felt like I was in a position to go, but it just, the timing wasn't right. But little did I know, about a week and a half later, I'd be getting a text asking if I was interested in going back there, and I immediately said yes. It wasn't even a doubt in my mind. I did get approval to go back there, and then within 2 days, I was on a plane. Even just a plane ride back there was, I knew it was going to be bare, but I think we only had like 6, 7 people on our plane, so that's something I've never experienced before. And then just when we got off the plane and Ubered over to the hotel that we were at, as soon as you got in the hotel, you can just feel the heaviness that was there within the nurses. Our assignment there was to provide peer support services at this particular hotel for roughly 1,000 nurses and medical staff. There was 2 of us there at that hotel to do that. Our assignment was to basically be present for them to talk to if they needed to talk. We never did go into the hospital, so we weren't exposed directly to COVID patients. However, when the nurses came home and they properly decontaminated, we were very busy, and immediately very busy. When we got back there, it was probably the height of all the deaths that were going on, and just we immediately started hearing some of the stories from these nurses, and it was very raw. Just the numbers and the amount of death that these nurses were seeing in such a short amount of time. And as we described when we talked to them, these nurses were seeing the deaths that they would maybe see in their whole career condensed in like a 2 to 3 week period. So it was very devastating to them. So we knew that we were there to provide service to them, and we were busy all the time. They even asked us and kind of joked around a lot. It was like, did we ever sleep? What we did is again we were there for presence, but we got to see them off to the 12-hour shifts in the morning, and then after the day shift and night shift left, within like an hour, we got to see the off-coming shift come back from the hospitals, and just what a difference you'd see. You'd see the tired yet ready to go to work nurses, and then within an hour, you see just the beaten down, fatigued nurses that all they want to do is shower and eat, and then have some of them had opportunity to come and talk to us. So it was an amazing experience as far as giving me a new lens to look through, because like I mentioned, working as a firefighter and a paramedic, and we take patients to the hospitals and then we transfer with the nurses, and we have a good working relationship with our nurses, but I've never really got to understand or hear a lot about their side and their struggles, and they're very real, especially back there. So we were there for them. We talked to many every day that were just in tears. And then by the end of our conversations, I believe and I feel that we gave them enough hope that they were smiling and that they had enough encouragement to continue on to the next shift and the next day. But it was an amazing experience.
That sounds incredible, and thank you for doing that. I can only imagine how great of a support system you've provided, just being able to having somebody there who actually cares, who
Yeah.
actually cares to ask you how your day was and what's happening. So thank you. Tell me what were the things like what were the peer support tools, for lack of a better term, you used in order to like what worked? What kind of support worked for the nurses?
You know, I think support begins with listening and hearing what they have to say. And this was interesting. I thought about this the other day, and I was talking with someone else. It was very hard to recognize nurses when they were there. You don't realize how much, like when someone speaks, you look at their mouth or how they move or whatnot. Because when you cover the mouth up, and then when the nurses are wearing their caps and their scrubs, all you see is their eyes. Um, and so it was very hard sometimes to recognize someone maybe you just talked to like the day before, and you say, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, we just talked last night. So that was difficult. But the amazing thing is when that's the only thing that you can really see on them, it really, as a first responder, peer support, it just reemphasizes that when someone talks to you and you look into their eyes, they know that you're listening. And so that's what we did. We started off, like you talk about our tools. Our tool, the biggest important tool is just being present and looking at them in the eyes and listening to what they have to say and let them get it out. And then when they did that, we reaffirm what they're feeling, what they're doing, because they own those feelings. Those are theirs, and no one else's, and I can't change that. We recognize that. But we would help them see things. For instance, like there was quite a few nurses that were upset with the situations that they were around or situations that they were put in, and rightfully so. Um, it was very toxic in some ways. Um, but it was important because us as humans can get very caught up or wrapped up into things that we really have no influence over. We spend a lot of time and energy and fear and anxiety and doubt and uh, so many other emotions into things that perhaps we don't have that much control over. So what worked really well is, and we use it as like we call it the donut analogy, and that is that like as a donut, there's the hole that's in the middle. and that whole represents us, or the nurses in this case. And that is, those are the things that we have influence, or we have control over. We have control on how we respond to things. We have control over our emotions. We have control over, if we want to learn and grow, we have control. We make those decisions for ourselves. The other part of the donut is the part the tasty part, right? That tastes good. Um, that's the part we have some influence over. We have persuasion, possibly. Maybe there's someone we're working next to, and maybe they feel or do something differently, or maybe you see them doing something that's not quite right, still within the guidelines, but not quite right. And that's where you can share your experience or your thoughts and your ideas, and possibly try to persuade them. And that's a good place to spend some energy on. But also, you have to recognize that it still may not go the way you want. You may think it should go this certain way, but it still doesn't. But it's worthwhile to try to encourage other people or talk to other people or try to always find better ways, in this case, taking care of patients. And then there's the area that we call outside the donut, where it is you don't have any influence at all. It's outside policies or procedures are in place, or something that's so far away from your influence or control that there's nothing you can do to change the situation. So for instance, in this case, like let's say the numbers of COVID or what's coming in or how many patients you have, there may be a time or place to maybe have that talk of persuasion or encouragement or different ideas. But when you're facing a crisis mode, there's definitely some things you have no control over. And so again, right back to when talking with the nurses, we help them recognize that, because there was a lot of them that were spending a lot of time in that area. And we just kind of help them focus, like, how can they respond to this situation? How can they be positive encouragement to those that are around them? And that's how you can persuade change. So that was a good tool. It worked very well. As well as we also talked a lot about self-care. There were so many nurses that were there that when they not only left their families and left their jobs, and some of them didn't even have jobs to come back to. A lot of them said like their hospitals closed down, or they wanted to serve and help so much that they left a full-time job to come out here knowing that their job wasn't going to be there coming with and that, and leaving families and scared families, worried about them all the time. But a lot of them brought work with them, brought school with them. So they were not only working 12-hour shifts and seeing death and working with all these COVID patients, but they were still having to take care of other things. So they're in crisis mode. The nurses were. I mean, they were barely keeping their head above the water just at work. And then when they come home on their time off, we're trying to catch up on the things at home or school. So we really emphasize that self-care. And our table that we had set up there, we have like little donation things that we were always willing to give away, like, mask bands and all that stuff. And that drew a lot of attention over our table. But we always ask them before they pick that up, what do you do for self-care? And sleep doesn't count, although it's important, but we wanted to hear something from them that was different than just sleep, because there's more to self-care than just sleep. And it was really good. It was a conversation starter, and we had a great opportunity to share other areas that other resources available to them, whether it was even just listening to music, or a lot of them called their family every night, which is really good. With the gyms being closed down within the hotel, we still provided, we're able to get them a room where at least they can stretch and do yoga and meditate and stuff like that. That's self-care. So anyways, I believe those are the tools that are probably the most impactful tools while we're there. But there were still so many others.
Thank you very much for sharing them. Those are fantastic, and I really enjoyed listening to your analogy about the donut.
Yeah.
You really put it very elegantly. Thank you. Tell me, is there anything else about the New York trip that really kind of you left with? Something that is you would like to share, something that left you unsettled or settled, something that really made an impact on you from that trip?
Just, like I said earlier, just how much what they do and what they see and do was nothing that I'd really experienced before. So I have a whole new appreciation for our nurses out there and what they're seeing and doing, and having to work with doctors, and and not only that, but just having to work with people they don't even know. I mean, travel nurses deal with it all the time, I would imagine, where they're always jumping around and having to make new relationships and make new friends and all that stuff. But here you have a group of 1,000 and upwards of 5,000 nurses going into these hospitals and working right next to people and seeing in over just a couple weeks that I was there for a month, seeing the relationships there develop. When we first got there, you saw a lot of people that were alone and still trying to figure it out. But the real beautiful thing about it is like just before I left, although we were still talking to people, the nurses were creating their own peer groups, their own support groups, and they were talking with one another and, you know, um, encouraging one another or even crying with one another. It was so powerful to see that when we left, all the new relationships that were built in the midst of something that's so deadly and destructive, that there's still some beautiful things to that. And I think that's um, it's pretty powerful to see that, that um, you can look at this as being as deadly as it was and destructive as in which it is, but you always have to look for those little victories within in the midst of all of this stuff. And for me, in my experience and what I saw, and for me personally, there were so many there.
It's really encouraging to hear it from you. Thank you for bringing that up because I feel like the post-traumatic growth, like we typically talk about the post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress injury, and all these things, but we often forget to talk about the post-traumatic growth, which is a thing. And studies have actually, I just recently looked at some relatively small study, but they looked at Holocaust survivors. I'm sorry, not Holocaust survivors. One of the Israeli wars survivors, and they looked over longitudinally over a period of time. They looked at their measurements. They took their measurements based on their trauma scores, overall well-being scores, and just overall seeing how they're functioning. They took it at 3 points in time, and they found that the higher the trauma scores were initially, the higher the post-traumatic growth was long term.
Mm-hmm.
So that's encouraging. I'm not saying that everybody should go and jump into COVID response right off the bat.
Yeah.
However, I think that there is also that aspect of it is that it is an opportunity to fall up as opposed to falling down, and it is an opportunity to create good and positive relationships.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about your current experiences. Like, what's happening now? I know that you came back and you did 2 weeks of quarantine,
Mm-hmm.
then jumped back into doing your normal first responder work. How does your new normal compare to the previous normal?
The new normal. I think we're still trying to figure it out. There's still a lot to be learned and gathered. I think specific to our agency, I think we're doing a good job. Um, we do, like I mentioned, we do transport, and just like any other fire agency, we do respond to medical calls. So that has been a change in the sense that, and our dispatchers now do a great job of, they do like a pre-screening of people. So when this first started, um, as many other first responders may have recognized too, that we actually had a drop in our medical calls. They were telling people if they were having symptoms of quarantine at home. And then also people didn't want to go, I believe people didn't want to go to the hospital and be exposed there. So our call volume actually went down, but the majority of the calls we went to were still people who were showing signs of this. So the different thing now is, we always did a good job with PPE, but now we're relying on the screening of our dispatchers, and not just them, but also the reporting parties of giving correct information so we can be properly protected when we show up. But we have found that sometimes, for whatever reason, maybe an RP or a patient is not answering the questions correctly, or maybe when we show up, as this happened, if you're the first responder, you know that sometimes you get a dispatch call for one thing, you show up as something completely different. So that's caught us off guard a couple times. Initially, just like a lot of other people, we didn't have the necessary equipment to just completely gown up and do that for every single call. So we're very selective on that. So I think that also added to it. But even now, like when we have to respond to a call, we just used to jump in, put our gloves in as we got on scene, and grab our gear and go inside. And now there's those extra steps of putting on the gown, which doesn't seem like it takes long, but when we're on a full Tyvek suit, it takes a little time. And then also some patients are being asked to come outside, which is a huge help to us. But I often think about, how a patient would be, if something's going on medically with them and how comfortable they are being put out in the wide open in front of the neighbors and stuff. Some of them are very private, and that's understandable. So that's the kind of stuff that's changed for us, just the additional equipment, the time that it takes, the screening that our dispatch does. They do a great job, like I said, but still sometimes being caught off guard. And then, of course, our family. A lot of first responders got young kids and family at home, and as best we do at work, and with as little information that's still out there on the transmission, and and are we truly protected, and are we going to bring them home to their families as a big, huge concern. So that actually adds to a lot of stress and anxiety for not just the first responders, but also the families. So now I think it's gone on long enough that I think we're very we're getting better at recognizing the signs early and getting the screening done correctly and early, and showing up prepared, and we have more resources and stuff now. So it's kind of like the new norm, and I don't like saying that word, but I think we're used to it now. We started when we come on the shift and at nighttime, taking our temperature and just trying to be on top of that and logging all that information. We have a place where we come in from a call, and we can sanitize our boots in, or we just switch out of them and leave them out in the app bay and go with different shoes, and constantly cleaning stuff around the station. Another change for us has been that we don't really want to cross-contaminate one another. So a lot of our training has been postponed indefinitely until until decided otherwise. But we're still doing in-house training and doing the best we can with what we got. But it has a lot of the big training that we do with different companies and different stations and stuff has now been limited to what we can do. So, but we're getting there. I think we'll get back to where we were. We're just kind of in a season right now, but I think we've adapted well.
I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like you have to, right?
Yeah.
Really not a question. I can only imagine, because I was thinking about it as you were talking. I can only imagine having to get into a fire gear while wearing Tyvek suits and all the protection. Like just having this to do the same thing with a flight suit is hard enough. But fire gear, oh my gosh.
Yeah, just to clarify, we're not wearing like our structure gear that we go into fire and then putting Tyvek on that. So we're still wearing like what you would normally see us in on day to day, and then putting a Tyvek suit on top of that. So
okay,
yeah,
so that's basically kind of the same thing as what you would do with a flight suit, right?
Right. You just look like a bunch of painters showing up with hats on. And that was the other thing too. You mentioned what's changed is we always think of like PPE as when we go to a medical call, but now we have to consider that when we go to a vehicle accident, or if we go in someone's house to change their smoke detector. Our dispatcher hasn't had a chance to ask those questions, so we're the ones that have to. Are we going in the house with a mask on to change a battery? So it's not just the medical calls anymore. We have to be careful with everything that we do now. So
Yeah, it's such a tremendous impact because everything is taking triple amount of time, right?
mm-hmm.
And then you have to go and decon between the calls, or how do you make sure that you don't cross-contaminate, and how if one of you is sick, then everyone is sick, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's so much because it affects you both professionally within your group professionally, right? But it also affects that same group personally at home, because many of us have, somebody who's immunocompromised at home, or older parents, or younger kids.
Right.
And that story goes on and on and on. I know a few of my friends have had to stay away from their children for months at a time just to not expose them to, potentially what they're carrying on themselves, because because of the fact that COVID can be asymptomatic, as well as there's the period where you can contaminate somebody while you are not, where you're not showing any symptoms. So there's been a significant amount of impact.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Tell me, so I know that you do a tremendous amount of peer support. Can you tell me what you do for peer support now with all the organizations that you're involved with?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, I'm involved with a nonprofit organization that I went out with to New York. We also provide within an organization. We believe in, as peer support and peer supporters, when we respond to a crisis, that's the during the incident or shortly thereafter, where we're doing diffusions, debriefings, and follow-ups and stuff. Um, we want to really do a good job of getting up in front of it too. So the organization I'm with, we actually provide stress awareness management mitigation training to academies coming in. So we do that. It's a training that, I never had in, any of my years up to this point. Is like, it's not a matter of if you have that critical incident, but it's when and what resources are available and what does stress look like? How does it manifest itself? And what can I do to help mitigate that stress? And who can I talk to? So I'm involved with that, the training of that. I'm also, like I mentioned, within my own organization, part of a peer support program. And that, unfortunately, like so many other things, are started from a tragedy. We had a person work within our department that was working one day and had been in a career for a long time, and the next day they just weren't there anymore, and no one could figure out what it was. We're trying to recall, did he get injured, this and that, and some time went by, and the information got out, and he approved of it. Is that he was suffering from PTSD, and no one really knew, and he was at a point where he even felt he can talk to anybody. And like so many of us are, or have been, is that, there's always that suck it up or let's move on, or I can't let anybody know that I'm weak or that I'm even just human and I have emotions, So within our organization, we started our own peer support program. We go out training through crisis response care, and we went around the stations and we handed out brochures with our phone numbers, all this stuff, and we explained to all of our personnel that what we provide. And it was a bittersweet thing, and that's because immediately we started getting phone calls from people, and maybe it was from a previous incident, or maybe it was just relationships at home. And the bitter part was that the stuff had been going on, and we didn't have anything there for them before. The sweet thing is that we do now, and then they utilize us all the time, and we're there always trying to figure out new ways and that we can help support them, and not just them, but also the spouses and the families at home. So we're very involved with that at our organization. And then I got involved with a county organization within our own county. Again, this happened because of an unfortunate incident where another agency within our county, another fire agency, had the sudden death of one of the fire personnel, and it was a relatively small agency, and it rocked the whole department, and they were trying to reach out, and a couple people were trying to reach out and see what was available to them, and they contacted our agency because they heard we had a peer support program, and they asked us, if we can provide anything for them. And at the time, we were just learning how to take care of our own, and we really didn't have anything in place on or what that would even look like, how we would do that. And we did the best that we could to support them through the difficult season. It was shortly thereafter that, though, a couple of individuals from that agency stepped forward and ended up having the conversation with all the upper management in the county, and asked, we can't allow this happen. We need to support one another. This is a real thing. Our members are being impacted by this stuff, and they have been over all these years. And what do we do for those agencies, one, that don't have anything, and also the other agency, if there's something so big within that agency that even the peer supporters themselves are affected by either a critical incident or something of that nature. And so shortly after that, we started our county team, which was comprised of first responders from police, fire, EMS, dispatchers, chaplains, all that. And we got together as a task force, and we first tried to see what everybody has or what they don't have, and then started sharing ideas and thoughts until we became an organization that supports peer support programs, starting them. We work very closely with other agencies to provide training for our first responders and for spouses. And we continue looking for more and more ways every year that we can support frontline personnel, and then also to train up our own on how to provide that on a peer support level within our county agencies. And then we've been fortunate enough to because of what we've established within our county, is that we've been utilized even outside of our county in other areas, and called the places where people have suffered line of duty deaths. We've been instrumental in helping them through their difficult times. So,
You've done an enormous amount of work in peer support, and I know that in the past we've asked you guys to support us with some of the other organizations that I was involved with outside of DRN. What you've done is tremendous in terms of peer support for just local first responders. And I think another thing is good to remember is that there are a tremendous amount of resources that are available out there if you are struggling, if things are going on, whether it's at home or at work. And there are peer support groups that are available, there are debriefings that are available, there are counseling available with culturally competent clinicians. There are multiple nonprofits that provide all of these resources, like 1033 Foundation and the Crisis Response and Code 9. So there are all of these resources in case something is happening and you do need to reach out. I really enjoy what you brought up, the whole education thing prior to incidences. I think it's extremely important. One of the things that DRAM started doing as a result of COVID is that we started to provide education to clinicians on how to provide competent care to frontline responders. These classes have been quite successful. I think that we've had people attend from 10 different states. So that's another portion of education that also is available for people. On that note, were there any other tips specifically that are COVID-19 related for self-care that you would like to share outside of what you already shared earlier?
I would just say, as far as self-care, know who your trusted friends and family and peers are, and reach out to them. And what we like to say when we do diffusings or even peer one-on-ones is that, and I've heard you say it before, Natalie, says we are human. We're not superhuman, in what we do. So I think we do our jobs very well. I think not everybody can do first responder jobs, but the ones that do, we're very good at. If we see something needs to be done on scene, we're very good at accomplishing what we're trained to do and the tasks that we're doing. However, it does not mean that we still don't see, our eyes see and our ears hear, and we feel things as we encounter these calls. And in the past, we've done kind of a good job of somewhat stuffing down, or you hear people say compartmentalize. And what I like to say is that as far as self-care, have those people in your life and develop relationships in your life. And it can be at work, home, or wherever, that you can have those open conversations with. And when someone asks you how you're doing, I think the number one reply is everybody always says, "I'm fine, I'm good." And a lot of times for different reasons, maybe we don't have time to get into it. We don't feel comfortable talking to them. But again, with those trusted individuals or family members you have, when they ask you how you're doing, and even if you don't know how you're doing, but you're not feeling right, give yourself permission to say, even if you have to say, "I don't know," either, "Can I have a minute?" or "I don't know, can you help me try to figure this out?" Or it's okay to even say, "I don't know. Something's going on, but I don't know." And that just leaves the door open for more conversation. I think a lot of times when we tell our family or friends or close friends that we're okay, either we're doing a really good job hiding it and they just move on, or they can see it on us, and that's why they're asking in the first place if we're okay. And I think, and I've had my own personal experiences within my lifetime and with my spouse, where I've said that I'm okay, and my spouse knows that I'm not. But if we say that we're okay, and they can see, they love us, they want to help us. That's why they're asking us if we're okay. They want to help us. And if we say we're okay and we're not open and honest, even if it's like, "I don't know, I'm just not feeling right, I'm not feeling good." But if we say we're okay and they see that we're not, we're basically kind of shutting that door. And they see something and they may feel like they're less valued now, because they're supposed to be the ones that we go to and talk to, and the ones that love us, and we're vulnerable with one another. But when we say, I'm okay when really we're not. We're kind of closing that door. So again, if we're not, just give yourself permission to say you're not. And you don't have to have the answers, but leave that door open for future conversations. And then I would also say that um, along with having your family close, know who you can go to for that encouragement. Um, have an identity outside of what we do. I think that's another big one where we see with like retirees, and we provide peer support for retirees, is they put so much of who they are into the job that we do. And although it's important and it's in a calling, and we're out there, and making a difference, um, we have to develop the other foundations in our life that can sustain us, because there will be a time, um, whether through unfortunate injuries, or even just with age, that we get to the point where we retire and we hang up whatever we're wearing, our badge or scrubs or whatever that is, and then we hang that up. And we see a lot of retirees really struggle with that from after retirement. Um, their acts of service and helping people, they're not in a place to do that like they used to. You hear a lot of relationships go south after retirement. So all that to say is, have those other foundations in your life. Don't put your identity completely in the work that we do. As honorable as it is that what we do, we have to have, for whatever faith or belief you have, the spirituality component. You have to set up yourself up financially. You have to have those close friends. You have to have other relationships outside of what you do to sustain who you are, because that is who we are. We wear the uniform and the badge, and some people, that's what they see us as. And although we are, there's something underneath that, or as you say, Natalie, under the mask. That's who our true identity is. And so we need to take that very seriously, take care of ourselves. And I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff, without speaking of my wife and my family that supports me. And I just like to share a little thing that I remind my wife that I get to do the things that I do because of what she's put in place. And I kind of assimilate that to like a large tree, a Lebanon tree, cedar tree, whatever. I get to go out and do the things and be visible and do the first responder things, do the peer support stuff that I do. But I wouldn't be able to do that without her support at home, with her taking care of the family while I'm gone. If I'm gone out on assignment for a month in New York, or if I'm gone on a fire for 2, 3 weeks, she's the one that, as like in a tree, that I get to branch out and reach out far and provide covering and safety for the people that we encounter. I only get to do that because of the roots of that tree. And I remind my wife that she is the roots of the tree. She brings the nourishment into our family. She roots us into the soil. She gives us a strong foundation at home. And although she can't be seen, um, she is the reason that we thrive as a family. So have that in place. Have your family in place. Um, Work on relationships. It's not always easy, but that's who we really are. It has to do with the relationships and the people that we meet through our journey in life.
Thank you so very much for bringing up the family and the
Yeah,
identity outside of work. I really enjoyed listening to your analogy of the tree. I think it's really, really important in nourishing the support systems, both in and out, being
yeah,
able to receive as well as being able to give.
right.
It's so very important.
Yeah,
Thank you so very much. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversations,
yes,
our conversation today.
yeah.
Thank you for joining us. And is there anything else that you wanted to say before we done?
No, well, yes, I just want to say thank you for what you guys do. I was around when you guys started, and I think we even took a class together, perhaps. But your vision for what you guys provide is amazing. You guys have done some amazing things, and I can't wait to see what other impact you guys are going to have on people. So it's much needed, as we see. So for all you out there, please support DRAN and what they do. They're an amazing group of people and individuals that don't just provide first line help, responder help, but they're actually helping first responders too. So very admirable, and I'm honored to be on your show here, and I look forward to the future.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was a pleasure having you, and I hope you have a wonderful, fantastic day.
We will. Thank you. You too.